This is E&P Reports, a vodcast from editor and publisher. Since 1884, the authoritative voice of news publishing. And this episode sponsored by IQ Audience Plus by Town News. Consumer revenue has never been more important. Digital leaders at media organizations worldwide understand the need to accelerate its growth now. Plus, traditional one-size-fits-all paywalls aren't the answer. They're blunt instruments that treat all visitors the same way. IQ Audience Plus is a smart, dynamic metering solution that empowers media companies to maximize revenue by identifying key audiences, seeding engagement, and growing membership and subscriptions. Supercharge your consumer revenue, grow engagement, and bolster your advertising income now with IQ Audience Plus. Visit townnews.com EP today to learn more. And hi, I'm Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P. If you are enjoying E&P Reports, our weekly vodcast series on your favorite podcast platform, please follow us right now. If you're watching the video, there is a subscribe button right under the screen. Click that. There's a bell to the right. Click that, and you'll get an update each and every time we upload a new episode. Someone sent me a link at the time of this recording, just a few days prior, to a book they discovered called 30. 30 being the expression of no more, the story's over. Many of us in the newspaper industry or the news publishing industry have known this term, 30. Written by a gentleman named Greg Little, who has had an amazing career as a journalist in markets all over USA, mostly small markets, who is now, along with his wife, the owner of the Mariposa, California Gazette. And he writes this book kind of like a biography, more like a journey through small town journalism. And he gives examples that show the value of having a local paper and gives advice to those of us that may not understand how rewarding it is, along with how challenging it is, to be that fabric of a local community. I really am enjoying the book, and I really enjoyed this interview. It's just 30 minutes, and I want you to stick around because Greg's got a lot to say, and he truly is someone that gets what it's all about when it comes to serving a community and providing great journalism to a local town. So with your permission, let me take you out to Mariposa, California, as we chat with Greg Little, the author of 30. Full disclosure, Greg, I have not finished your book. I've only gone through 2 chapters so far, but I love it. I gotta say, Greg, you are writing not just a book about local journalism, it's almost like a journey to help anyone who wants to understand the value of what a community newspaper is to a community. They're seeing it through your eyes. Does that make sense? I mean, this is what I'm gathering from your work, sir.
That kind of the whole concept. It didn't start out to be. It started out that I actually lost my job as an editor in Idaho, and so in my not so happy state, I thought I'd write about I started out to write about corporate journalism and my take on it and what I think it's done, but I decided that, well, in my reasoning, that how can I do that unless I talk about my life experience, and some of the issues I've been through in small journalism, in small town journalism. And that was the entire concept of it. And that's kind of how it grew into basically a biography, with the end of it being a comment on where I think journalism is right now.
I think people tend to think about newspapers as the big city dailies. They it's like, oh my God, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Buffalo News. They don't understand when we discuss local journalism, we're discussing more than just a business for a local community. We're discussing the fabric of the community, the archives of the community, along with what is necessary in I'm going to pontificate because it's my show and I can do whatever the hell I want, right? But I'm saying along with our mission as part of the constitutional democracy we're in, to be that final check on local power. all research shows that when there is a thriving local journalistic entity in a town, voter turnout is higher, taxes are lower, there's much less corruption in government. Does that make sense? So in some way, this journey that you're taking people through is reinforcing how much fun it can be. I mean, I know you. So what I'm seeing in your writing is that you're showing the ups and the downs. I mean, it's hard to be a local journalist, right? Because you have to meet a deadline, and sometimes you're chasing a story that goes away. I get all that, right? But
Sure.
you really loved your life in local. Well, you're still doing it now, obviously, but you really you have a passion for what you do.
Absolutely. And I think, you made a good point. It's interesting. I did an interview less than a month ago. As you know, we have a recall election coming here in California.
Oh yeah, we know. Yes, we're watching it.
And so I went over and interviewed the clerk in charge of the election, and found out that voter registration in Mariposa County right now is higher than it's ever been in history. And I like to think maybe we play a little part in that, because we cover this stuff closely and have good working relationships and try to get people out to vote and all of that kind of stuff. And yes, you're right. Local journalism is about a lot more than writing and putting out a newspaper. It's about the town and the area you live in, and how you can not only, as you say, point out, hold the government officials accountable, but also rally communities around causes and for the betterment of it, and I think that's lost right now in a lot of areas. That was my motivation here, to show that you're right. Another thing, I keep saying you're right, Mike. You're right about, they think of the big city newsrooms and all that, but you've been to city council meetings, you've been there, and this stuff it's in the weeds sometimes, but it's where our money's spent. And our people, their job is to try to make some sense of it all for the public, to show where their money's going.
Now, I don't want to get into the actual journalism that you're creating in Maricopa County, because it is biased. Let's be totally honest. You and I'm a publisher, you're a publisher. I, like you, I'm lucky to have my wife as a business partner. And I think we should mention that your wife is Nicole, right?
Yes, she's the publisher. Okay.
There you go.
I'm just a lowly country editor. Okay.
Well, my wife runs the books and runs the business for editor and publisher. If without that partnership, it would be difficult. You see what I'm saying? To not work together in a marriage, because the marriage is a partnership also in the mission,
Right.
And that was some advice you gave in your forward. I thought that was interesting, that it's hard to be a local journalist or a local publisher, and your family may not understand that you got to be at a city council meeting. Fairs occur on the weekends, right? I mean, it's
Yes.
almost like running a restaurant. You're busy during the holidays, but you are busy.
Exactly.
You have to be, correct? I mean, it just...
That's it, and I think that's another side of journalism people forget about or don't understand, is the toll it takes on you. I mean, I'll never forget in Tennessee, there was a highway patrol trooper who was gunned down, killed on the highway by two teenagers. It consumed my life for months. The court hearings, the digging and finding out who these kids were, and all of those types of things. That you can't just stop. You have to get the story.
But as I opened up this segment here, bias. I mean, you may now have someone watching this or listening to this podcast saying, "How dare you be the voice of this community? I hate everything you write." You see because we are not algorithms, we are publishers. But what I did look at your newspaper, and I do want to compliment you, because I looked at it online, obviously, is that you're doing a good job reporting in a journalistic way. You're not spouting off in an opinion, you're sourcing your stories. You see, I think we got to get to a point where we define what journalism is in our society too. When you write that story, you have a mission to present both sides of the argument, correct? This is
Exactly.
also, I mean, and sometimes you have to do that when it hurts you to do it because you may disagree with the other side of the argument. But then you have your chance to spout off on your opinion page, right? And do your own editorials if you wish, but then you clearly label it as such. Am I right?
Exactly. And I think that gets lost today.
Yes.
People call the cable news, and those shows, those primetime shows are opinion shows. And I think they should be labeled as such. We label our opinion pages. This is opinion,
Right.
but the news coverage is down the middle facts. And I think that's totally getting lost in our society. That might be a grand statement, but that's my opinion.
No, wait, but you're allowed to. Okay, so let's now get into the meat and potatoes of your life. You own a local newspaper. You have ink in your veins now. And this is, because, I joke and say E&P is truly a nonprofit, not because we're legally a nonprofit, is my wife and I haven't taken a profit out of it yet. We're constantly
Right.
just paying down the debt and putting more money back into the product. But sometimes that's what you do. But let's get into how should I say this? The fact that you're not corporate journalism. This is something you take a few swipes at, and you started off discussing what happened to you in Iowa. Corporate journalism, what does that mean to you? And how is that affecting where the industry is today? And go ahead, spout off if you like. We will label this as opinion if we wish, or we're fact. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I think it's a little of both, actually. Here's where I think it went wrong. I think, all these mergers happened for the last 30 years, even longer. You had all these mergers. These corporations bought up these big city newspapers. What they failed, I don't know if they failed to realize, I don't know what they thought, but along with these big city newspapers came all of these smaller weekly publications that they owned, right? And so as I call them in my book, the bean counters said, well, I don't know if they knew what to do with these news publications, these smaller ones. So what they ended up doing was gutting them down to bare minimum. They merged smaller. I have an example in my book. It's about, when small town papers, when these big corporations combine Smithville and Jonesville and the offices in Smithville, Jonesville doesn't like that.
Right.
Because there's football rivalry, there's sports rivalry, school rivalry. And so you lose your readership because they think it leans one way. I just think the corporations didn't and still don't know what to do with these smaller publications that they own. And they're basically a tax write-off now. And that penalizes, in my estimation, the local communities. We as a small newspaper, we sponsor a Little League team every year. We put a float in the parade. We do those types of things, and I don't see the big corporations doing that. And as I also pointed out, those coaches of Little League teams and those parade organizers, they're advertisers too. And, and if you can't show the community you care and that you want what's best for the community, why will they support you? We're running, I think last week we had 32 pages at 50% advertising.
Wow. You were at 50%, huh?
We're right at between 40, 45 to 55 a week, in advertising. And people they ask me all the time, well, how do you do that? I say, well, it must work. That's the only answer I can. Well, I mean, they wouldn't spend the money if it didn't work, right?
People are actually reading my paper because we have good content. So the ad next to the good content is seen by an eyeball who may be motivated to buy a product or service. It's that simple, right? I mean, the core product has quality, so people read it. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. What was it? I mean, this isn't rocket science to me. I learned this 40 some years ago as a reporter. Oh, this is how it works, huh? And I just think corporations have lost that. And I think, they can focus on their big city stuff. That's great. I've got opinions on that as well too, but they've just lost the small publications that can be almost the heartbeat of a town. if you do it the right way.
Depends.
That's where my frustration comes in.
It depends on which of the top line items you focus on. If you're the corporation, what they tended to focus on, in my humble opinion, was, oh, wow, insert business. Look at that. So we can keep that going. We can strip editorial. Oh, there's some classified revenue. We can keep that going and strip editorial. And there's a local sales force that can sell a bunch of digital services that have nothing to do with the editorial product. So we'll force those out on the street so they can build a website or maintain social media, and we'll strip editorial. Eventually, the paper loses its street cred. And that is the problem. Now, my question to you, sir, is, and I ask this with a lot of people when we get into these discussions, are those brands savable? I mean, we both know now, or maybe you don't know, and we're chasing a story. We're trying to get comment on it, but everybody's been locked down by NDAs, that Gannett is now selling off those weeklies, as you know. And
Right.
we all know they're selling them. Everybody's, but we're trying to get the numbers because they're doing it on pennies on the dollar is what we're hearing, but no one will. You see what I'm saying? So could that be the preamble? And I'm saying could until we chase the story and get it sourced. Could that be the preamble for the bankruptcy when you want to, show loss on your balance sheets, right? I mean, this is it.
Right.
Now, who's picking up those weeklies? Local entrepreneurs, a new breed, people who saw the value. Are those brands savable? Or when does the brand get so hurt by how the corporate company treated it that you have to start a new one? That's my, are these, wasn't it I'm just thinking what the expression that Warren Buffett used to say, whenever I bought a company, it was a cigar that was still smoldering. I just breathed more life into it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Do you believe these brands in these towns are savable, can come back?
I think it's possible. I think, but how that gets done is the question I write about that I can't answer. You are right. There's an example 20 miles from where I'm sitting right now where it has gone so bad that the community's like, we don't want anything to do with it. Now, could somebody come in and resurrect it? Yeah, but they better have some financial backing because it's going to take 2 to 5 years just to restore the reputation. People want refrigerator journalism. That's what they want. They want their kids' picture from the football game they can hang on the refrigerator. That has not changed.
No.
Yet the big companies are not delivering that. And so I don't know how to answer that question. I think partly yes, but how do you get that? I guess, I see these big companies like Facebook and Google and Amazon, we're talking trillions of dollars here. I mean, way beyond my financial comprehension. If they want to save local journalism, not only will they go in and buy these papers or find local owners, they'll fund them to get back on their feet and be able to produce a product that the public will come back to. But boy, that's a steep road to climb, and I'm worried about it.
Well, and that's why there's such a big issue now with news deserts, because there's now data that shows when a town doesn't have a local news presence, everything starts to fall apart. And I didn't want to say the word paper. I mean, I still print and I love saying the word newspaper, but no one says you have to be a 7-day weeker to still have the same impact in the community. And we've had people like you that run weekly community papers say, my town is okay with the news being delivered weekly. They don't, and I mean, I'm sure your website, if there's a fire or a theft or an urgent need, you will post a story like that. But having that paper published weekly still serves the town and still provides, as I said, the fabric, the history, the archives, what the community needs. So let's talk about now, if we may, your future. How's it going? I mean, your circ is okay. Are your 50% ad count revenues are good? Have you thought about taking over that paper 20 miles away? I mean, is it in the back of your head? Am I allowed to ask? I mean,
you could ask. Yes. I mean, we've talked about it, how we get there is a whole nother issue, but yes. And how are we doing? We're doing great. We've grown our circulation. We've owned the paper 3.5 years now. We were looking the other day, we've grown our circulation probably a good estimate, 10%, our print circulation in 3.5 years, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
We've grown our advertising revenue in that time. We have been able to, now this was beyond me when I first came here, but we are 35 miles from Yosemite National Park. Okay. I mean, it's a jewel in the world. This newspaper never put out a travel magazine. So we came here and we put together a travel magazine. Now COVID wrecked it last year, but that was a product we added. You know, we've grown the county fair here is the big deal of the year. We've grown that publication. We put the fair book out every year. We're right in the middle of it right now. I've got 2 weeks to get it to the printer. I mean, those are the types of things we've done to be able to grow the revenue, but they've been well received, you know, and I think that argument sometimes, I don't know where it goes, you know, but I think in some ways you got to invest and prove you can do this. And then that revenue will come back to you once you prove to people, hey, this is good stuff and this does work. So yeah, how are we doing? Pretty good. You know, we're doing fine. And yeah, I'd love to take over a few, but I don't know. You know, I got enough gray hair the way it is, but we'll see what happens.
How are you doing with finding talent? I mean, to get that good stringer or that good sales rep, are you attracting quality people in your area to come in and find a career with your company?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that. I mean, our advertising person she's been here 6 years before we were here even. She's outstanding. But we've actually hired 2 reporters in the last year, replacing one person, and we actually added a reporter position this year. And so we have attracted good talent. I recruited one person from Indiana, my home state. We had our other reporter we hired out of Los Angeles area, who was just a recent graduate from a journalism school. But the key is, you know, when we talked to both of them, they were both, well, one was a graduate looking for a job. The other one was one where a corporate entity had come in and bought the family-owned newspaper in Indiana and started first day, gutted half the staff, you know. Right. He was looking around, but the money we were offering them, even in Los Angeles where she was looking, was more than they were offering them. So, you know, we've taken the business approach that we've got to invest in our talent and give them annual raises and try to do Christmas bonuses, things like that. You know, we have a vacation plan. We offer half of their medical insurance and give them dental and vision insurance on us.
You know, you're going to get a lot of resumes right now being sent.
Well, I'm sure, but I mean, I think as a small business owner, you know, versus a corporation, you've got to do. How are you going to keep people if you don't? If you take less profit and put it back into the business to keep people, to me, in the long run, that grows the revenue. But I don't see that model being practiced.
I have trouble with your book's title. Am I allowed to be critical now?
Absolutely.
It taught me something. I've heard, you know, I've been in the industry on the sales side, but I know the term 30 was something you put at the end of a press release or right. Something you're crafting for news. And when I started reading your book, you told me where it came from. I had no idea it was a code used during the Civil War for the end of a transmission via teletype, correct? Or whatever it was, not teletype. Exactly. You know, I could just see Abraham Lincoln at the War Department, you know, reading something at the end would be 30. But your book, I haven't gotten through it yet because you just sent me the copy a few days before this recording. So I'm only on the 3rd chapter now. 30 to me means the end. Right. And that was a little depressing of a title to me because you call it 30. And that means, but your book is not about the end of journalism. It's about your life in it. And in a way, it's an inspiration for those that are maybe entering it, and the value of it. Why 30? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I struggled with that. I almost changed that title at the very end, but I had a couple people I've known over the years who know that term intimately.
Yeah.
You know, and they said, keep it. Come on, keep it. And I did have somebody actually message me and say, are you talking about the end of journalism? So
Right. Yeah.
maybe I did make a mistake on it. I don't know. But that's not what it's about.
So when I get to the end of the book, you're not saying to me, and don't enter this industry, go into PR and work for corporations. And I mean, I'll get to a happy end because you're obviously having a good life. I mean, you're working hard, but you're making a living and you're serving a community. And you show that in your work. All right. So give me the worst day of your life in journalism, if you don't mind my asking. I mean, that wasn't on a list of questions I set you up for, so please forgive me. What is the worst day?
The worst day of my life? Well, I've had quite a few. Okay. I mean, you would think it would be the day that they came in and said, oh, we're eliminating your editor job, you know, in Idaho. And the choice they gave me was take a big pay cut and become a reporter, or and lose and have to fire one of your reporters. And I said no. And so I left. You know, I basically took the layoff and kept the reporters there. You would think that would be my worst day in journalism. Another bad day I had was when my wife and I, not long after we got here, and it's in toward the end of the book, we got on we managed to get, when President Obama came to Yosemite, we got on the press pool bus with all the corporate, you know, the
you were there with the AP guys and the
yes.
Fox News guys and all that kind of stuff. Girls.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
And we thought, oh wow, look, we're in the press corps. We were 12 hours on a bus, saw Obama twice for maybe 10 minutes, and otherwise we're stuck on a bus with all these people who sit there and knit and do all this stuff all day and wait for them to end it, you know. I think that was one of the worst days in journalism.
Oh, that wasn't exciting though. That's interesting. It was.
Yeah, it was interesting to see. I'd never seen a living president, you know, and to be able to take a photo up close and all that was really cool.
And did he pronounced Yosemite correctly? I assume he did not say Yosemite.
He did not say Yosemite Sam. No, he did not. So that was a good thing.
What is the best day? Your best day as a journalist or as an editor? I don't want to say about, you know, birth of a child or anything like that. I'm talking about fulfilling your craft, your mission.
It was when I was sitting in a fancy hotel in Washington, D.C. in the early 1990s, sitting at a table with, it was actually it was called the Beacon Awards back then. Those were the cable television awards. This was during the birth of, you know, HGTV and all this kind of stuff. I was with Corp TV because I had spent over a year luring Corp TV to rural Northeast Montana, and they ended up taping or doing a 1-hour television show about the jurisdictional nightmares on an Indian reservation where I live.
Oh, that's right. I saw that in your profile. That's right.
Yeah, and so the pinnacle of it was Corp TV won their very first national award in the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C. that night, and I was there and got to go up on stage and accept that award for them. So, I mean, that was 2 years of gumshoe journalism before the internet, before all this was telephone calls and letters and, you know, the old traditional way. And it paid off in the end, and it brought together the tribal people, the U.S. attorney, the local court people, the police people, and it addressed the problem of murder on an Indian reservation. And to this day, that murder rate has dropped. So we got them talking, you know, as a small once-a-week little newspaper in Montana.
You know, there was that Pulitzer quote that I know I'm going to get wrong, but when you shine a spotlight, you know, the truth will be revealed. Yes. You really had to build that spotlight from scratch and beg people to turn it on, and then you got them to give it some national attention, and you really made a difference. So that pride on that stage was not, gee, I won an award. It's, gee, I made a difference. Is that what you're saying?
The awards, you know, I write about awards in my book. You know, journalism awards are such a flighty thing. It's some guy sitting, you know, you judge contests. You're sitting in your living room, you know.
Well, but except for the Eppies, my awards. I'm kidding. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hey, I was one of your 50 of 50 or what last
15
year.
over 50. We
Yeah,
one of them. I apologize. Congratulations. You were part of the class last year. Is that?
last year.
Oh, you
Yeah.
shared it with Leonard Woolsey. Oh, you have less hair than him, but that's okay.
Wait a minute, I got hair.
But go ahead. I'm sorry. You were about to say about the shining the spotlight and the words. Go ahead. It
Right.
wasn't-
The awards are a pot shoot in journalism. You know, they're nice to get, but it's what's behind them. That's what matters. You know, that you can make a difference. In Tennessee, I uncovered illegal sewage sludge dumping. Now that's not a sexy Washington D.C. issue, but when they're dumping raw sewage sludge in a field next to your house, it means something.
Yeah, I bet it does.
And if you can get that stopped, you've changed people's lives. That's what this is all about, you know. And I think to go back to the corporate bashing, that's what they forget. These are
Let-
human beings.
Let's bring this home now. The focus of your book definitely was geared to budding journalists. You can feel that in your writing. What takeaway would you hope that kid who, I want to say kid, that young adult who has a dream of being a journalist, and all their friends and all their families saying, don't go into that industry, it's dying, go into PR, do something else. I mean, what takeaway do you want them to have from your writing?
I hope that they ignore the advice of others and do it.
Follow the
And
passion.
I think so. I think that's the only now it may turn out that they don't like it and they do something different eventually, but how else do we get people interested in this? You know, I remember a talk in Tennessee I did, and they were seniors in college. They were all journalism students. I asked them, what do you want to do? Of course, they all wanted to go to work at the New York Times or National Geographic or all this. And I told them, I wish every young journalism student in this country was made mandatory. They go to a small weekly newspaper somewhere out in the middle of nowhere and learn what it's all about. Because you can be a journalist. You're also the photographer. You're the janitor. You can stuff papers. You learn it all, you know. And I think that's important. And I think sometimes these journalism schools show pie in the sky when the reality on the ground is this is tough stuff. You know, like I said, we hired a reporter 9 months ago. She's sitting at board of supervisors meetings and going to airport board meetings and all that. That's not glory there. That's not glory, but it's important and it shows where the tax dollars are spent. And I hope people will go into that profession. My bigger hope is that somehow, some way we can save these smaller publications because they are the backbone of this country. That's what the founding fathers, they set it all up just for that. So they could be watched themselves. What a deal that was, you know?
And it's kind of heartwarming when you look at some legislation that some say may pass, like the Local Journalism Sustainability Act. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but you know,
Yes.
God forbid we give a tax credit to the guy who's paying that reporter, give one to your advertiser and give one to your subscriber. I mean, that way. But what I think is heartwarming, it's bipartisan. Even as much as as some politicians hate that spotlight on them, they appreciate the need for that final check. They do see a need for us to continue to thrive. And your story is amazing. And the story you wrote is amazing. Final takeaway from your book. I'm only through chapter 3. I got a bit more to get through, but what's the final message you want someone to get from the book, if I may be so bold?
The final message that there's hope out there.
There is.
But I think my biggest message is this, that, and this might sound philosophical or deep or whatever, but can you imagine that before this country was formed and these guys were running around in the pubs of New England and they said, you know, we're tired of what's going on over there in England. We're tired of them telling us how to worship, how to write, what we have to do. And they banded together and they actually overthrew a government. And then here's the kicker to me, when they set up the new government, obviously we all know about the 3 branches of government. They set up a 4th,
Right.
basically, and which was the free press, and said, even us, even we who formed this government can get corrupt. So we need somebody to watch us. And they set that up. And that's why we're here today. That's why we get postal rates the way we do still to this day, because of how they set that stuff up, and that we can deliver the news to the public. I don't know that there's a greater calling. Again, that's philosophical, but it's the foundation of this country.
That I cannot in any way, shape, form, or size top that, because you are now, it's exactly how we feel at E&P. And I want you to know that there is hope, because I'm interviewing more and more local people who are taking over these brands, and that's what they're saying to me. And no, they're not making 50% margins like the good old days. You know what I mean? But it's a comfortable living. It's a good career. Hard. You state it in the book. You're not Pollyanna at all. It's hard, but
Yes.
boy, it's rewarding. I mean, it really, really, really is rewarding. What's that expression? I know I'm doing a good job when I'm standing in a line and the person in front of me likes me and the person behind me hates me. But I know I'm doing a bad job if neither of them have ever heard of my newspaper. So
That's exactly right. My first real editor told me, if you don't piss somebody off once a week, you're not doing your job. You know, and he was a 90-year-old man, and he got it.
that make them think. Okay, the book is called 30. Obviously, the author, Greg Little. If someone wants to get the book, where is it right now? Is it on Amazon? Is it on a bunch of sites?
It's on Amazon right now. I'm in the process of getting a website right now, and I don't have it yet.
Well, we'll get a link to it on the page. Don't you worry. It'll be at E&P. We'll have a link to the book on the page that this vodcast, I've been corrected many times, will be featured. And we would like possibly to check in with you again, sir, and see how things are going, and keep in touch with us, and let us know if you do expand the Nicole and Greg Little publishing empire.
we will let you know, and I'd love to come back, and I'd love to see more people, not me, but like me, on these national shows and give us a perspective, you know, what it's like on the local level to fix a pothole or to discuss these. I think it just gets so lost in our national discussion. People out here, they don't care about the filibuster. They don't even know what it is. They want to know if the road's going to get fixed. Happy to come back anytime, Mike.
All news is local. And finally, what is your email address if someone wants to get a hold of you, sir, and ask more questions?
It's a real easy one. It's Greg, Greg, at MariposaGazette.com.
MARIPOSA, Mariposa Gazette. Greg, thanks for your time. Thanks for your book. When I finish it, I will likely send you an email and give you final thoughts. But right now, I'm loving it. And you stay well, and give my best to your wife, Nicole.
I appreciate it, Mike. Thanks for having me on.